Hello and welcome to My Two Dice Worth, where I talk about topics that I come across in the hobby that I find interesting and know something about. Now, in today's video, I'll be talking about miniature agnostic games and, in general, spreading the gospel about them. Now, in my store, I've had folks walk in not knowing this game exists. So, usually I'm left giving them a quick introduction. Now, there are some of you out there who know about these games, but I'm talking to the ones who might be interested on this new frontier to the hobby. Sometimes they're newbies, sometimes they're folks who are so concentrated on one particular game they do not know anything else exists outside that particular game. Now, Miniature Agnostic Rulebook is a set of tabletop wargames rules that does not tie a player to a specific line of miniatures. Now, unlike proprietary systems such as Warhammer 40k or War Machine, which are tightly linked to their own miniature ranges, miniature agnostic games allow hobbyists to use any miniatures they already own or prefer. This flexibility has become increasingly popular in the tabletop gaming community, particularly as the cost and availability of miniatures tend to fluctuate. Now, at its core, a miniature agnostic rulebook empowers creativity and accessibility. For example, a player might own a collection of medieval knights from Perry Miniatures, while another prefers Fireforge Games miniatures. In an agnostic system such as Lion Rampant, both collections can be used seamlessly on the tabletop without concern for brand restrictions. This lowers the entry barriers for newcomers who can begin playing without heavily investing in a single manufacturer's product line. A key strength of miniature agnostic systems is their adaptability across genres. For historical wargamers, rule sets like Hail Caesar or Deus Vult allow figures from different companies to represent armies ranging from Romans to Crusaders. In fantasy settings, Frostgrave and Dragon Rampant thrive because players can field skeletons, wizards, and knights from companies such as Reaper, North Star military figures, or even repurposed Games Workshop figures. Science fiction is also well represented by agnostic systems, like Stargrave, where players can kit bash or repurpose miniatures from, Mantic Games, Corvus Belli, or even board games like Star Wars Imperial Assault. Among the most celebrated miniature agnostic rulebooks is Frostgrave. Frostgrave is a fantasy skirmish game where rival wizards and their warbands explore a ruined frozen city in search of treasure and arcane knowledge. What makes Frostgrave compelling is its emphasis on campaign play. Wizards grow in power, spells are learned, and henchmen either perish or gain notoriety over the course of linked games. Players are free to choose miniatures from any company to represent their wizard and followers, whether they are classic medieval troops, sinister undead, or exotic mercenaries. This narrative-driven approach makes Frostgrave a favorite amongst hobbyists who enjoy storytelling as much as dice rolling. The system's science fiction sibling, Stargrave, transports players to the far reaches of the galaxy, where captains and their crews embark on daring missions. Now, instead of wizards and spells, captains are smugglers, bounty hunters, or warlords commanding ragtag crews of humans, aliens, and robots. The game captures the feel of space operas, blending gritty mercenary firefights with imaginative campaign arcs. Because it's miniature agnostic, a crew might be composed of sleek Infinity models, or classic Star Wars miniatures, or even 3D printed aliens, reflecting the boundless diversity of science fiction itself. For players who prefer historical settings, Lion Rampant offers a streamlined set of rules for medieval battles, while its cousin Dragon Rampant adapts the same system to fantasy warfare. Lion Rampant excels in invoking the clash of feudal knights, spearmen, and archers, perfect for small-scale medieval engagements. And Dragon Rampant, meanwhile, takes the same mechanics and adds a fantasy flavor. Warbands may include trolls, giants, dragons, alongside, human warriors. These games are particularly appealing because they allow medieval miniatures from Perry miniatures, Fireforge games, or even fantasy plastics. From Games Workshop, the old ones, to coexist on the same tabletop. For players seeking grander battles, Oathmark scales up action to full fantasy armies clashing, across battlefields. Unlike Frostgrave, Frostgrave is more skirmish. Oathmark is designed for rank and flank warfare, where units of infantry, cavalry, and monsters maneuver and fight in formation. The rules encourage building armies from different races, so that you can get dwarves, orcs, elves, and humans, in the same army without prescribing a single aesthetic. This makes it a natural fit for mixing miniatures from across different manufacturers, creating armies that reflect the player's imagination, rather than the company's, catalog. Historical gamers may gravitate towards Pikeman's Lament, for example, a set of rules covering pike and short era, from the 16th and 17th centuries. The game is fast-paced, flexible, perfect for representing skirmishes during English Civil War, the 30 Years' War, or colonial conflicts. Like other rampant titles, it thrives on small-scale battles, encouraging players to use any miniatures they like, whether it's the finely detailed 28 historical miniatures or smaller travel-friendly 15 miniatures. Now, in contrast, Gaslands takes a radical different approach, combining tabletop wargaming with kit-bashed toy cars. Inspired by post-apocalyptic themes, players convert, Matchbox or Hot Wheels, those cars, into vehicles armed with, guns and spikes and rockets, then race and battle across improvised tracks. Its rule set is deliberately chaotic, with sliding cars, wipeouts, and cinematic explosions forming the heart of the gameplay. Now, as one of the more inventive miniature agnostic systems, Gasland proves that wargaming need not be limited to toy soldiers and monsters. I mean, a toy car from a thrift store can become the star of the battlefield. On the fantasy side, there's Songs of Blade and Heroes, which provides an elegant skirmish system that relies on simple mechanics and quick play. Armies are built using a flexible point system, so a player could field a warband of goblins, a lone dragon, or a band of heroic knights. The game's strength lies in its accessibility. Rules are easy to learn. Players can put any miniatures they own to use. This has made it a beloved entry point for beginners and experienced hobbyists who enjoy experimenting with different collections in their collection themselves. For solo and cooperative play, there's 5 parsecs from home and 5 leagues from the Borderlands. Those are standout titles, actually. These narrative-driven systems allow players to create, crews of adventurers or bands of fantasy warriors. Then send them on randomly generated missions and campaigns. In 5 Parsecs, for example, a ragtag crew explores the galaxy, battling raiders or aliens while developing, personal story arcs. In 5 Leagues, fantasy adventurers venture across dangerous frontiers, fighting monsters, and uncovering dark plots. Now, the beauty of these systems is that they thrive on imagination. Players can use miniatures from any source, and the rules provide endless replayability for those who prefer gaming alone or in cooperative groups. Finally, Horizon Wars brings cinematic battles between futuristic armies and towering mechs to the tabletop. Its rules allow players to field tanks, infantry, and giant robots in large-scale clashes reminiscent of anime or military science fiction. With no dedicated miniature line, Horizon Wars has become a canvas for hobbyists who combine 10 15 28 figures from companies like BattleTech, Drop Zone Commander, or even scratch build models. This flexibility, paired with its emphasis on combined arms, makes it a favorite amongst those who want the freedom to blend different science fiction aesthetics into a single game. The miniature agnostic gaming model offers a fantastic balance of possibilities and challenges, if you ask me. Its greatest appeal lies in the freedom it grants players, the ability to use any figures they wish, whether from established rangers, independent sculptors, or even their own 3D printers. This flexibility not only reduces the cost of entry, but also encourages creativity and sustainability, since players can breathe new life into miniatures that might, otherwise be gathering dust. War bands and armies become personal expressions of imagination, rather than the carbon copies of a company's catalog. However, such freedoms can bring its own complications. Without a dedicated miniature line, some games lack a consistent visual identity. And this leaves leaving the look and the feel of the battlefield entirely up to the players, which is not a bad thing. But for newcomers, this openness can be daunting, as there's no obvious guide to what miniatures they should buy first. Differences in scale, sculpting, style, may also disrupt the sense of cohesion on the battlefield or the tabletop. On a practical level, publishers of agnostic rules often face financial hurdles, since they do not benefit from miniature sales to sustain their games over time. However, despite these limitations, the potential for growth is enormous. Digital tools like apps for army building or campaign tracking could make such systems more accessible and engaging. Collaborations with multiple miniature companies could provide, curated collections that help beginners find a starting point without sacrificing the freedom of choice. The rise of 3D printing, in particular, opens vast possibilities. Players are no longer bound by supply chains or limited product lines, but can instead design, print, and even field unique armies at home. Coupled with the growing dissatisfaction at the escalating costs of proprietary war games, miniature agnostic rulebooks are in a strong position to attract hobbyists seeking, alternatives. At the same time, these games must contend with the dominance of these proprietary giants whose established communities, their organized events, and their marketing power are difficult, very, very difficult to rival. These very openness that makes agnostic systems appealing can also fragment, player bases, as individuals bring wildly different models, scales, and aesthetics to the table. Too much variety can sometimes dilute the sense of a shared experience. Furthermore, with so many agnostic rule sets being released, the market risks becoming crowded, making it difficult for any single game to maintain long-term momentum. Well, despite these challenges, the rise of the miniature agnostic system reflects broader trends in hobby culture. There's freedom of choice, affordability, and a focus on creativity. The storytelling over product sales. These systems offer a refreshing alternative to corporate-driven wargaming ecosystems. This flexibility not only reduces the cost of entry, but also encourages creativity and resourcefulness, since players can breathe new life into miniatures that might otherwise gather dust. While giants like Warhammer may dominate organized play, the future of miniature agnostic rulebooks lies in their ability to empower players to play the games they want with the miniatures they love. And that's my 2 dice worth. Now, the examples given here only scratch the surface of the variety of miniature agnostic rulebooks out there. So I do recommend going down the rabbit hole to discover all the rulebooks that I didn't talk about. Do you have a miniature agnostic rulebook that you'd like to share that I didn't mention? Perhaps one-page rules? Share it in the comments so we know which rulebook you want to share. Now, if you like me rambling about topics like this in my videos, do let me know in the comments and show some support with a like and a subscribe. And as always, don't forget to enjoy painting those figures.